Let's now take a look at functions within MATLAB. Functions are operators that take certain inputs and produce from that a given output based on what the function does. We've already seen some intrinsic functions that are pre-programmed into MATLAB, and for example we have seen the sine function, which takes as an input an angle in radians, in this case pi over 2, and as an output it will produce the sine of that angle. We've also seen, for example, the square root function, and this function takes as an input a number, in this case 4, and as an output it produces the square root of that number. MATLAB provides us with the functionality to also define our own functions, such that we can easily access very common operations that we want to do within our programs. Now the easiest way to do this is by clicking here on the left top corner of the screen on New in the toolbar and selecting Function from the drop-down list. This will open up an editor panel with a template for your function of choice. And we see that this template is already filled in a bit, and the header has the keyword function, followed by a list of output arguments, an equality sign, the name of the function, and a list of input arguments. What follows is then some form of documentation. So these percentage signs indicate that this is comments or documentation. So these lines are not read by the MATLAB engine when it is executing this code. And we see that there is already some dummy code available in this function, and what this function at this point only does is it takes the values of the input arguments and puts them on the corresponding output arguments. So let's take a look at one of our own functions, and for example let's take a look at a function that calculates the area of a circle. So it's always good to take descriptive names for your functions because that's good practice in coding. You know what your function does. Now in order to compute the area of a circle, we obviously need the radius. So that's the input argument here, and the output argument will be the area of the circle. So we took care of this header already. We can proceed with filling in the documentation. In this case it will be fairly trivial. Calculates the area of a circle, and you can also provide some more detailed explanation, but I'm not going to do that here for this very simple function. And we will see that if we invoke the help command on this function, that this documentation will be printed. So it's always good to, if you're writing a new function, also provide it with some documentation here. Let's get rid of this dummy code and write the actual code that we want to produce. So we know that the area, which is the output, the area of a circle in terms of its radius is pi times the radius squared. And we don't want any specific output to the command window. Okay, now let's save this. Save. And we see that automatically MATLAB wants to save it with a name corresponding to the name of the function, and it's you have to always keep this the same. The name of the file should be equal to the name of the function. So let's save this. And now we see, since this is on the current path, that if we type help area of circle, we see the documentation that we had just put over here. So this calculates the area of a circle. You can add more documentation, such as description of the outputs and of the inputs as you see fit. And let's use it for a moment. So let's say we want to calculate the area of a circle with radius 1. Of circle with input 1. And that's, well, exactly pi, because pi times 1 squared is equal to pi. And we can then reuse this easily for different radii, and also do this, especially if you want to do things sequentially many times. Using these kinds of functions can be very useful.